Welcome back to Intro to Philosophy 1010. Our book is The World of Philosophy, an Introductory Reader by Stephen Kahn. And in this video, we'll be discussing the Bhagavad Gita and a discussion of heaven by Xunzi. So it's a Confucian scholar that's spelled Xunzi. So that second reading is a short one. We'll be spending most of the time on the Bhagavad Gita. The main difference between the two is in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna proclaims himself to be the supreme personality of God. And he's talking to Arjuna, who is his cousin and his devotee. And he's telling him, you should do all of your action without any attachment to the fruits of your labor, but only as an act of surrendered, loving service to me, the Supreme Soul. And that I will interact with you on a personal level, and that you should love me with all your heart, and I will reciprocate. That's the Bhagavad Gita. The discussion of heaven by Xunzi is the opposite, where he says, heaven doesn't care about you. Whatever heaven is, it doesn't have a sense of personal self-awareness, and it will not intervene in your affairs. So it's all up to you. If you manage your affairs properly, your life will be good, and if you don't, then your life will not be good. And that any appeals to the supernatural for help are not, that's not what a sagely person would do. So that's, it was a much shorter article. And this is in reference to Exam 6, Part A, Question 1 of the Bhagavad Gita and Xunzi, which presents the better argument for what makes life worth living. Why and explain. And this will also be covering Exam 6, Part B, Questions 1 and 2. So the Question 1 is explain the argument Krishna gives to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and number 2 is explain Xunzi's Confucian view on the meaning of life. Okay, so who's got a better view, basically the atheist, or Krishna, who's claiming to be the personal God himself? Okay, so I'll give a little brief overview of the Bhagavad Gita. The setting is Krishna driving a chariot pulled by horses, a war chariot, and his cousin Arjuna's in the chariot, and he's getting ready to fight this big civil war. They're in the no man's land between two armies. On one side is Arjuna's side. Everyone's related. It's a civil war. Arjuna's got family members on both sides, and this is what's bringing him such distress. He looks to Krishna, he sees all his beloved uncles and cousins, and his brothers are all on his side, except for one, Karna, who is a half-brother. At any rate, he thinks it would be better for him to lay down his arms and let his enemy kill him, rather than defend himself and kill his family members. And then Krishna explains to Arjuna why he should fight. And his basic point is, first of all, Krishna says, I'm the Supreme Self, and I'm telling you to do it, so that's what you should do, because you are a part and parcel of my Supreme Self. You're an eternal soul. So are all of the combatants on the battlefield. No one will die. Their bodies will die, but the soul is indestructible. And furthermore, their fate is already sealed, because I've already determined it, and therefore you should just be an instrument of my will. Serve me single-mindedly with a loving attitude, and you'll be okay. You will not suffer from bad karmic reactions as a result of this. And so have peace of mind and do your duty as a warrior. And he'll get into all of the details. So let me just read some. I'll be skipping some sections, but let me begin on page 514. So Krishna says, as one abandons worn-out clothes and acquires new ones, so when the body is worn out, a new one is acquired by the self who lives within. So the self cannot be pierced by weapons or burned by fire or dried up by the wind. So none of that material elements can destroy the self. It is everlasting and infinite, standing on the motionless foundations of eternity. The self is unmanifested, beyond all thought, beyond all change. Knowing this, you should not grieve. So, and then he says, birth and death are inevitable, so why would you have sorrow over such an unavoidable thing? He goes on to say the self with a capital S, so that he's talking about himself. This is Krishna talking, the supreme form of Vishnu, according to his own account. The self of all beings living within the body is eternal and cannot be harmed, therefore do not grieve. Okay, so then continuing here on the left-hand column, page 515, at the beginning of time I declared two paths for the pure heart, Jnana Yoga, the contemplative path of spiritual wisdom, and Karma Yoga, the active path of selfless service. So Jnana, it's spelled J-N-A-N-A, but it's pronounced like a G-Y-A-N-A. So he's saying, okay, through Jnana Yoga, that's philosophical speculation, and Karma Yoga is action, doing some, polishing the altar on the temple or some kind of physical service. Jnana Yoga is philosophical meditation on God. He goes on to say, one who shirks action does not attain freedom. No one can attain perfection by abstaining from work. Indeed, there is no one who rests for even an instant. So the soul is constantly active. Everyone has to work. You can't stop it. So he's speaking to Arjuna, who wants to lay down his bow and arrow and refrain from doing his duty as a member of the warrior caste, the Kshatriyas. So Krishna is saying, no, you have to do your duty. He goes on to say, fulfill all your duties. Action is better than inaction, even to maintain your body, Arjuna. So Arjuna is spelled A-R-J-U-N-A, but most Hindus say Arjun. They don't pronounce the final A, but I usually do because I see it there. So even to maintain your body, Arjun, you are obliged to act. Selfish action imprisons the world. Act selflessly without any thoughts of personal profit. At the beginning, mankind and the obligation of selfless service were created together. Through selfless service, you will always be fruitful and find the fulfillment of your desires. This is the promise of the Creator. So do your duty without attachment to the results. You do your duty for duty's sake. Arjuna's here. He's supposed to fight this battle. His evil cousin Duryodhana is trying to take the throne illegitimately. So his duty is to defend the law regardless of the consequences. This is what Krishna is telling him to do. If you do that, your desires will be fulfilled. You will be happy. You won't be miserable like you think as a result of killing your family members, because it's your duty to do that. The right-hand column up at the top, 515, every selfless act, Arjuna, is born from Brahman, the eternal infinite Godhead. Brahman is present in every act of service. So we discussed this earlier in the book when we talked about the Upanishads. So there's two sides of the self in Hinduism, Atman and Brahman. And I think a helpful way to look at that is Atman and the Brahman paradox is the particle wave paradox of quantum mechanics. According to quantum mechanics, when you observe a quantum particle, it behaves like an individual particle. But when you're not observing it, it behaves like a mathematical wave of probability for where a particle might appear if you were to observe it. So it's the two sides of one thing. And similarly, this was Erwin Schrödinger who helped discover this particle wave paradox of quantum mechanics. He pointed to the Atman Brahman paradox of the Upanishads. When you observe yourself as an individual particle of personality, you are, but at the same time, you're an impersonal wave of Brahman. And I discussed this when we discussed the Upanishads in Buddhism earlier in the class, because we went over Shankara's version of Hinduism, where he does not believe in an eternal individual personal soul. So his version of Hinduism is more or less Buddhism. There's a slight difference, whereas in his idea, Brahman is unchanging and eternal, whereas for Buddhism, the implication was that there's nothing unchanging and eternal. Everything is in a continuous flux. Therefore, don't be attached to the illusion of an individual self. Let go of that attachment, then your desires will dry up and you'll be happy. That's Buddhism. The real opposite of Buddhism would be what Krishna is talking about here in the Bhagavad Gita. You're an eternal individual personal soul, and you have an eternal personal relationship with the Supreme Soul, and you should have a burning desire to be with God. So the goal is not to dry up desire, but to focus all desire on the one Supreme Self. That's Krishna's ultimate advice. So, and the ultimate path towards developing this loving relationship with God is selfless service, which is called bhakti yoga. So he went over 3 forms of yoga, or he will go over 3. 2 he's already discussed: jnana yoga, karma yoga, and then bhakti yoga, which is just thinking about God with love and serving God. And you can use jnana yoga, which is philosophical speculation, or karma yoga, which is actively engaging in physical work. Those can become bhakti yoga if you do them for the purpose of serving God. All right, so I got off on that started with the Atman Brahman paradox of the self. So Krishna's the supreme Atman and the supreme Brahman. So continuing on 515, right hand column. Every selfless act, Arjuna, is born from Brahman, the eternal infinite Godhead. Brahman is present in every act of service. All life turns on this law. O Arjuna, those who violate it, indulging the senses for their own pleasure and ignoring the needs of others, have wasted their life. But those who realize the self are always satisfied. Having found the source of joy and fulfillment, they no longer seek happiness from the external world. All right, so skipping down a little bit, he'll say that what the great person does, the common person follows. So that even I, he says, Krishna speaking as God, I don't have to do anything, but if I were to stop doing work, then everyone would follow me, and the demigods wouldn't do their job, and the cosmos would fall into a state of chaos. So therefore, do your duty, if for no other reason than the example that you set for others. We saw Sartre talk about that. The atheist Sartre said, because there is no God, with the idea of what a human should be, every time any human acts, it's as much as to broadcast to the world, this is how a human should be. Well, Krishna's agreeing with Sartre despite claiming to be the Supreme Godhead. What you do, especially if you're a great man like Arjuna is and respected by the public, others will follow. So if you shirk your duty out of sentiment for your family members, then others are going to follow your path, and that would lead to the downfall of civilization with people not doing their duty. So continuing, he says, the ignorant work for their own profit, Arjuna. The wise work for the welfare of the world. Skipping down, all actions are performed by the gunas of prakriti. Diluted by identification with the ego, a person thinks, I am the doer, but the illumined man or woman understands the domain of the gunas. I'm going to explain what that is, and is not attached. Such people know that the gunas interact with each other. They do not claim to be the doer. The gunas, there's 3 gunas. The word means literally ropes. It's translated as the modes of material nature. There's these 3 primal forces that permeate the material cosmos. Another word for which is prakriti. And the 3 modes are goodness, passion, and ignorance, or sattva guna, raja guna, and tama guna, ignorance. And everything in the material world, including human psychology, is made by a combination of these 3 gunas. And this also is the foundation for the caste system. There's 4 castes. The Brahmins at the top, the intellectuals who know Brahman and Atman, the Kshatriyas, the politician and the executive branch, the warriors and the politicians. Then there's the Vaishyas, the merchants, the landed agriculturalists, the business owners, and then there's the laborers, the Shudras. It's like a pyramid with the Brahmins at the top. And your caste is determined by the combination of the 3 gunas in your soul or in your subtle material body. Those who are predominantly in the mode of goodness, sattva guna, those are the Brahmins. Those who are in the mixed modes of passion and goodness, the Kshatriyas, the warriors like Arjuna. Those who are in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance are the merchants. And those who are predominantly in the mode of ignorance are the Shudras, the laborers. And then there's characteristics of how people behave, regarding the three modes. You can tell which one is predominant in your life by the actions that if you like to sleep all day and eat fermented foods and get intoxicated, that's the mode of ignorance. If you're very interested in fighting and sexual intercourse and prideful, that's the mode of passion. If you're contemplative and mild-mannered and you don't try to steal the spotlight from people and you're interested in studying philosophy, that's the mode of goodness. Everyone has all three, and again, it's the combination of the three that determines your caste. All right, so continuing the bottom of 515 on the right over to 516, those who are deluded by the operation of the gunas become attached to the results of their action. Those who understand these truths should not unsettle the ignorant, performing all actions for my sake, completely absorbed in the self and without expectation, fight, but stay free from the fever of the ego. So that's an important point for this philosophy, performing all actions for my sake. Krishna says, I'm the supreme self. Anything you do should be done as an act of service to me. You can't help but serve me no matter what you do. If you serve the demigods, well, they're all a part and parcel of me. If you serve some other person or an animal, those are also my manifestations. So you should just focus on the actual source, go right to the source, which is me, and serve me with love. This is the overriding theme of the Bhagavad Gita. Then he'll say some people, they try to repress their material desires, but you're not genuine if you're not acting on your senses, but you're harboring the desires for sense gratification. And then, so the one way to get over that problem, Krishna will say, is just focus on serving his sense desires, and then it won't be repression. Another point he goes on to say is, it is better to strive in one's own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another. Nothing is ever lost in following one's own dharma, but competition in another's dharma breeds fear and insecurity. So that relates to the caste system. If you're a Brahmin by nature, you shouldn't try to do the work of a Vaishya. If you're a Vaishya by nature, you shouldn't try to do the work of a Kshatriya. So just do your duty, whatever it is. If you're a laborer, then do your labor. And if you do your duty thinking that you're offering it as sacrifice to the Supreme Self, that will liberate you. Better to be a street sweeper who's not that good at street sweeping than for a street sweeper to try to be the governor of the state. Because even if you succeeded at being the governor, you're not fulfilling your natural dharma, and the fruits of your actions aren't what matter anyway. It's the attitude with which you do them, and the attitude is one of service to God. That's a lot like the debate between Kant and Mill. Not that those two debated, but Kant said it's not the consequences of your actions that give them moral worth. It's the attitude with which you acted. The will, a good will, he said, is acting out of a sense of respect for and duty to the idea of a universal law. Well, Krishna is claiming to be the personification of the universal law, and he's telling Arjuna, and via Arjuna, everybody, act out of a sense of duty to me, and don't worry about the consequences. Okay, Arjuna, all of your family members will be killed, the leaders of society will die, that will lead to the collapse of society, so be it. Let the chips fall where they may. Do your duty, do what I'm telling you. That's all you should be concerned with. Okay, so 516. Now we're going to get into this vision of the universal form. Arjuna says, out of compassion, so this is 516, bottom of the left-hand column, out of compassion you have taught me the supreme mystery of the self. Through your words, my delusion is gone. You have explained the origin and end of every creature, O lotus-eyed one, and told me of your own supreme and limitless existence. Just as you have described your infinite glory, O Lord, now I long to see it. I want to see you as the supreme ruler of creation, O Lord, master of yoga. If you think me strong enough to behold it, show me your immortal self. Then Krishna says, behold, Arjuna, a million divine forms with an infinite variety of color and shape. Behold, the gods of the natural world and many more wonders never revealed before. Behold, the entire cosmos turning within my body and the other things you desire to see. But these things you cannot be seen with your physical eyes, therefore I give you spiritual vision to perceive my majestic power. So, then Sanjaya, so this whole Bhagavad Gita is being related by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra, who is Duryodhana's blind father. He's asking, what's going on this battle between my son and my nephews, including Arjuna? And Sanjaya has the power to see at a distance, and he's telling Dhritarashtra, this is what's been going on. And at this point, says Sanjaya, Krishna, the master of yoga, revealed to Arjuna his most exalted lordly form. So the God of gods, Arjuna saw all the manifold forms of the universe united as one, and he saw Krishna with a million faces, with ferocious teeth and flames coming out of his mouths. He's inhaling all the planets. He's inhaling all the great soldiers on the battlefield, like Bhishma, Drona, and Karna. Arjuna sees them dashing headlong into Krishna's many universal mouths. Arjuna on the right-hand column of page 517 says, you lap the worlds into your burning mouths and swallow them. Filled with your terrible radiance, O Vishnu, the whole of creation bursts into flames. And then Krishna says, I am time, the destroyer of all. I have come to consume the world. That's a famous quote that Robert J. Oppenheimer, the head of the American atomic bomb program in World War II, the Manhattan Project, at the first detonation of an atomic bomb in New Mexico in the Trinity Site, Oppenheimer, and they quoted here in the notes, and I'm looking on page 520, it's somewhere there, but Robert J. Oppenheimer, his translation said, now I am become death, destroyer of worlds. That's what he thought of when he saw the first mushroom cloud during the first atomic blast. And the word death is kala, time. I am time, the destroyer of all. Krishna says, I am time. He is space, he is time, he is everything. He's the source of the universe. And he's showing Arjuna, I'm going to devour all these soldiers, all these great soldiers and your family members anyway. So you should just do what I tell you and be an instrument of my will, and then you'll be okay. And Arjuna says, okay, I'm sorry, I'm terrified now that you've shown me this horrible universal form. Please, I want to see your more gentle form as the cowherd boy Krishna. And so Krishna gradually, he goes from his universal form, which Arjuna was the first to see, this ferocious form that embodies the entire universe and devours it, to his four-armed Vishnu form, back to his two-handed form as Krishna. So Krishna says, Arjuna, through my grace you have been united with me and received this vision of my radiant universal form. This is 518, now we're on the right-hand column, without beginning or end, which no one else has ever seen. Not by knowledge of the Vedas, nor sacrifice, nor charity, nor rituals, nor even by severe asceticism has any other mortal seen what you have seen, O heroic Arjuna. So, Arjuna says, please now let me see your gentle human form. And then Krishna goes on to instruct Arjuna by saying, but through unfailing devotion, Arjuna, you can know me, see me, and attain union with me. Those who make me the supreme goal of all their work and act without selfish attachment, who devote themselves to me completely and are free from ill will for any creature, enter into me. Continuing now in 519 on the left-hand column, Krishna says, because of your faith, I shall tell you the most profound secrets. Obtaining both jnana and vijnana, you will be free from all evil. This royal knowledge, this royal secret is the greatest purifier. And the basic secret is, Krishna says, I'm the supreme source of everything. I'm the supreme soul. And the only thing that you should be concerned about is loving me and serving me. If you do that, I will reciprocate in kind And that will liberate you from the cycle of reincarnation, and you can return to your blissful eternal status in the spiritual world. But let me just read bits. 519, left-hand column. At the end of the eon, these creatures return to unmanifested matter. At the beginning of the next cycle, I send them forth again, controlling my prakriti, that's material energy. Again and again, I bring forth these myriad forms and subject them to the laws of prakriti. None of these actions binds me, Arjuna. I am unattached to them, so they do not disturb my nature. So, in the Hindu cosmology, Krishna's, at least according to Krishna himself, he's the supreme form of Vishnu, but there's many forms of Vishnu. One of them descends from the spiritual world, lays down on this causal ocean of potential material energy, goes to sleep, and while dreaming exhales from the pores of his skin innumerable bubble universes which all expand outward, and then he takes he inhales, and all the universes go back into his spiritual form, and then he goes back to the spiritual world. That's what he was referring to, these enormous cycles of time, the megaverse of universes expanding out and returning in to Vishnu. So learned people do not get carried away with the dream that's ongoing in each of these bubble universes, but truly great souls seek my divine nature. They worship me with a one-pointed mind, having realized that I am the eternal source of all. Constantly striving, they make firm their resolve and worship me without wavering. Full of devotion, they sing of my divine glory. Others who follow the path of jnana, spiritual wisdom, they see that where there is one, that one is me. Where there are many, all are me. They see my face everywhere. I am the father and mother of the universe, and its grandfather too. I am its entire support. I am the sum of all knowledge, the purifier, the syllable Om. I am the sacred scriptures, the Rig, Yajur, and Sama Vedas. I am the goal of life, and Lord and support of all, the inner witness, the abode of all. I am the only refuge, the one true friend. I am the beginning, the staying, and the end of creation. I am the womb and the eternal seed. I am immortality and I am death. So he is everything. He's every single God. He mentions the various gods. He mentions the various categories of being. In any category of being you can think of, he's the greatest example of that category. Of all bodies of water, he's the ocean. He's the greatest general. He's the greatest of everything. He's the infinite source of all, and the highest perfection towards which everything strives. I am the object of all worship. This is 520 on the left. Its enjoyer and Lord, but those who fail to realize my true nature must be reborn. So this is the cycle of reincarnation. If you don't realize that Krishna is the supreme soul, and that your duty as a subordinate soul is to serve and love him, then you'll have to be reborn again and again and again. Because those who worship phantoms will become phantoms, but my devotees will come to me. Whatever I am offered in devotion with a pure heart, a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I accept with joy. Whatever you do, make it an offering to me. The food you eat, the sacrifices you make, the help you give, even your suffering. In this way, you will be freed from the bondage of karma and from its results, both pleasant and painful. Then, firm in renunciation and yoga, with your heart free, you will come to me. I look upon all creatures equally. None are less dear to me, and none more dear. But those who worship me with love live in me, and I come to life in them. Even sinners become holy when they take refuge in me alone. No one who is devoted to me will ever come to harm. All those who take refuge in me, whatever their birth, race, sex, or caste, will attain the supreme goal. Therefore, having been born in this transient and forlorn world, give all your love to me. Fill your mind with me. Love me, serve me, worship me always. Seek me in your heart. You will at last be united with me. So that's how the Bhagavad Gita ends. Now Xunzi, he says the exact opposite. Heaven doesn't care about you. It isn't even aware of itself. Just do your worldly duty in an orderly way, and your life will be fine. But if you depend on the help of heaven, then you're depending on a non-entity. So I'll just read a few bits here. On page 521, He says, heaven's ways are constant. It does not prevail because of a sage like Yao. It does not cease to prevail because of a tyrant like Ji. I don't know how to pronounce those, but I gave it a shot. Respond to it with good government, and good fortune will result. Respond to it with disorder, and misfortune will result. So I'm just going to skip around. If you turn your back upon the way and act rashly, then heaven cannot give you good fortune. Yet you must not curse heaven, for it is merely the natural result of your own actions. So, whatever happens to you is the result of your own actions. It's not heaven punishing you. It's not the laws of karma with any kind of a personality attached to them. There's just reactions for actions, and it's this uncaring universe that you live in. This is on 522. All men understand that the process has reached completion, but none understands the formless forces that bring it about. Hence it is called the accomplishment of heaven. Only the sage does not seek to understand heaven. So he's not going out and saying there's no divine force. He's just saying no one knows what it is. But at any rate, he apparently knows enough about it to know that heaven does not intervene in any kind of a personal way in your life. He goes on to say, are order and disorder due to the heavens? I reply, the sun and moon, the stars and constellations revolved in the same way in the time of Yu as in the time of Ji. So Yu was the good ruler, Ji was the tyrant. Yu achieved order, Ji brought disorder. Hence, order and disorder are not due to the heavens. Heaven does not suspend the winter because men dislike cold. Earth does not cease being wide because men dislike great distances. So that's the main point, is that don't expect heaven to intervene in your life. It won't. Just live an orderly life, and that's the best way that you can have happiness. So let me now go back to these discussion questions. This is exam 6, part A, question 1 of the Bhagavad Gita in Xunzi, which presents the better argument for what makes life worth living. Why? And explain. So if you don't believe in God, or even if you do believe in God, but you're like a deist, like many of the founding fathers of the United States, and you don't think that God takes a personal interest in your life, that God set up the laws of nature like a clock, he wound it up and then walked away, well, then maybe you think Xunzi gives a better argument for what makes life worth living, which is just taking care of your own business and expecting the results of your actions. If you believe in a personal God who intervenes in your life, then the Bhagavad Gita is probably better advice on what makes life worth living. What makes life worth living, according to Krishna, is surrendering yourself to him. He's claiming to be the supreme soul, the supreme self, of whom all other subordinate selves are like little fractal fragments. Realizing you're rooted in this supreme self, you should spend all of your energy loving God. He says, fill your mind with me, love me, serve me, worship me always, seeking me in your heart, you will at last be united with me. So then part B, this is exam 6, question 1. Explain the argument Krishna gives to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to kill his family members in the civil war. Krishna says, well, first of all, you're an eternal soul. You cannot die and you can't kill other souls. Secondly, it's your duty as a member of the warrior caste to fight. So you should do your duty without attachment to the results. And finally, you should do your duty as service to me. Just love me. Arjuna, look, I'm the universe itself. Everything that occurs in the universe comes from me and it returns to me. Just embrace that realization and do your duty. That's what he explains to Arjuna. And then part B, question 2, explain Xunzi's Confucian view on the meaning of life. So the meaning of life is whatever you make of it. Heaven doesn't have a personal concern for your life. Humans are their own meaning givers, it would seem to me. So that will be enough for this video.